Welcome to the Tailwind Marketing Podcast, where we talk to IT marketing leaders about how to drive more sales. Hosted by Carlos Corredor, founder of Condor, an Inc. 5000 company and one of the fastest growing IT marketing agencies in the US.
3, 2, 1, 0.
And this episode is brought to you by Condor, a digital marketing agency for mid-market B2B services companies. Most B2B marketing teams struggle to drive sales, overwhelmed by long sales cycles and an elusive audience. Condor helps you measure and generate a qualified pipeline, make the most with your budget, and be recognized as a revenue driver and not just a cost center. You can learn more at condoragency.com. Today, we want to welcome Jen Brown. We're excited. You know, she has quite the resume, not only with degrees, with a degree and an MBA from Harvard and UCLA, respectively, but she's also been a part of Gartner and Google and Salesforce. Well, Gartner and Google a couple of years each, and then Salesforce for almost a decade. And she's now the marketing director at Wordly, which is a sustainability data platform that I'll let you, Jen, tell us more about. But first of all, welcome and glad to have you.
Great to be here, Carlos. Thanks so much for having me.
And so we'll be discussing sustainability. She's been leading that especially from a marketing perspective, not only at her current company, but from a few years back. But before we jump into that, you know, I definitely want to hear, and I'm sure that people will want to hear, what it meant to work in companies like Google, like Salesforce, and also in Gartner, which is such a big influencer in the corporate marketing world. So yeah, curious to hear how much you learned there versus college versus your other positions. You know, is it that big of a deal?
Yeah. First of all, I feel incredibly fortunate to have started my career at Gartner. What an incredible place to learn about the tech industry and about marketing, messaging, positioning, because I started Gartner not in marketing, but as an analyst. And as an analyst, you have an area of the marketplace that you're looking into. I was focused on mobile security for a while and collaboration software for a while. And you're the one receiving a lot of the pitches from other companies. So you're the one looking at the market, seeing who the different companies are offering solutions, and you're trying to distill that right on the behalf of your clients who are the software buyers. So you're trying to think like a buyer. You're like, I'm in the minds of a buyer. What are the buyers asking? But then you're hearing all of the ways the solution providers are trying to sell their software or services. And so it's just a great way to get introduced to, this is how this is what effective messaging and positioning works. This really resonates with the pain points that my clients are trying to solve. This is a really way to describe something innovative and novel. And so that was a really interesting experience. And then it was a lot, being a Gartner, there is a bit of that academic element to it because you get to distill everything you've seen and heard into that report, right? And so there's also that aspect of still having that academic lens on things. And that's how you drive the value for clients there.
Yeah, I remember, because the Gartner is the quadrant, right?
Yep, the famous quadrant.
The famous quadrant. And
Yes.
then I think the Forrester one is the wave, if I remember correctly, right? And then
That's right.
for people that are not that knowledgeable about Gartner and Forrester, and I'll give my description of how I've seen it, but I'm curious to see if you agree on that or if you would emphasize something else. But they're essentially an influencer in the marketing world where companies, and in particular, well, they not only give you insights about marketing, but let's say in this case, marketing, right? Where marketing departments or companies, they subscribe to Gartner. And it's a pretty hefty yearly subscription, but then you get truly valuable insights. And depending on the package that you buy, you also get consulting to benchmark and compare yourself to what competitors or what the industry is doing, where trends are going, what channels are driving the best ROI, what platforms and technologies are being used, right? So, and I remember being part of an application where I worked in the previous agency, not for Gartner, but for Forrester, but I know it works very similarly. They have the Wave, which is a ranking of the best search engines in the world, not even in the US, in the world, right? So I was surprised on how rigorous and robust the methodology of evaluation is for the people that want to be featured there, right? Because nowadays you have a bunch of companies that email you and essentially it's a pay to play, just pay whatever. But here, that's always not the case. And you can apply, and sometimes, I became, really close with the evaluator because I was heading the analytics team, and he would really ask tough questions, ask for proof. So what I'm saying is, it was a very interesting for me learning experience of how that worked and the importance that those companies had. But it's curious to see if that's the way that you would describe it, what you guys did there, or any other insights or inside story about Gardner.
Yeah. I mean, when you do talk to an analyst from Forrester, Gardner, or IDC, or any of those analyst firms, I almost feel they are the voice of your customers in so many ways. Like, they are getting lots of questions from customers who are in the buying cycle. These folks are actively looking for software and solutions for the problem they have. And that's, those questions are reflected in then the evaluations to create those quadrants or those waves. So often talking to the analyst is like, you're getting all of the hardest questions from your prospects consolidated into one place. And so you've got to be prepared and view it as that way, right? You're not answering the analyst's questions only, you're answering your prospects' questions in that scenario too, because the analyst is advising various clients of theirs on which types of software might best address what they need. So you have to view that one conversation with an analyst could be 20 conversations with prospects. So it's very high stakes. Those evaluations involve the written questionnaires, which can be very lengthy. And then they also involve a demo of the live product to show what's real. And then they also involve customer references. So they're very thorough, and they have to look at your product and what you deliver from multiple angles to ensure that what you're offering is real, is effective, and can address, again, what those clients need on the analyst side and what your prospects are looking for. And then it's such a valuable asset, the quadrant and the wave, for the decision maker, for who's buying, because it helps validate their decision in a lot of ways to say, this is the software I want. This choice has also been independently validated with Forrester, IDC, Gartner. They've done the research too. And I know IT teams, procurement teams place a lot of value on those quadrants because it does back up the buyer's decision.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if it's tough for Gartner to evaluate and create a ranking, imagine for the regular marketing director, whoever who has to make the selection of the platform that they're going to use. So I remember after we went through that process and we got in I think it was the top 10 ranking for Rise Interactive, we got a lot of leads of enterprise level companies, which is what we were going after, just because appearing there, because it simplifies the decision of whoever is looking, for an agency or for a search agency. Why am I going to do it? Like you said, I'm not going to do this research myself. Somebody that has a lot of resources and knowledge, a lot more than what we have in our company, they already did that for us, and here it is, right? So that was good, and I'm sure from a learning experience, it was like, I'm sure you learn more. Well, I'm not sure. I wanted to ask you, but I would bet that you learn more at Gartner in those couple of years than in UCLA and Howard combined, at least for the purpose of marketing leadership and advancing your career within marketing.
Yeah, I would definitely say starting as an analyst gives you a unique perspective into how to be a marketer, especially a product marketer, and how to show the best of your product and best match your target audience's needs, right? And analysts are a great way to help you figure out how to do that. I would say the other part of the role, the marketing job it helps with is when you're on the other side, right? As a marketer now, I'm trying to influence analysts about the products I'm marketing and selling. So having had the other experience being the analyst on the other side, I'm like, I know what is compelling. I know what makes a great story. I know what kind of data, I know what kind of demo is going to perform well in
Mhm.
this case.
Mhm.
So it certainly helps me do my job in that area in working with analysts and analyst relations.
And how about the Google
Mhm.
phase and the Salesforce phase? Tell us a
Yeah,
little bit more about, general experience and what you thought about working there.
absolutely. So this is also a lovely trip down memory lane. Really enjoying this.
Mhm.
I mean,
And by the way,
Google.
Jen is, born and raised, or I don't know if born, but definitely spent most of her
Yeah.
life in the Bay Area and San Francisco in particular.
Yes, born and raised here, and remember the days before there was really many tech startups here. It was a very different place. So it's been really interesting to see the city change with the influx of so much tech and tech talent. Um, at Google at the time when I was there was just it was a big company, but not as giant it was today. It just had so much. Android had just come out. Can you imagine a world where Android was new, right? Where it was not certain that Android would actually be one of the most widely adopted mobile operating systems in the world? That was not a given, right? So there was a lot at stake at that time at Google to expand beyond search, beyond ads. And so what an incredible time really to be there. And I think I learned a lot about strategy work while I was there because I was doing executive communications. And so the job was really about how does Google articulate its search and advertising strategy to the board, to key partners. And so from that, I really learned about how to communicate a company's vision, how to communicate really what the future looks like, future selling, I would say, instead of being the more traditional product marketing I do now, which is focused on selling the product you have.
Mhm.
That really taught me that experience at Google how to paint a really compelling picture of
Mm.
what's happening in the world and how to respond to some really difficult challenges. At the time, and privacy was a huge concern, still is a huge concern. And so there were a lot of challenges around privacy, around monopolies that were coming at Google. And I was very close to all of the messaging and responses to those challenges.
Mhm.
So just learning how to listen to the criticisms, listen to policymakers' challenges, and be able to articulate the value Google is providing it was just a great experience as well. And also to go from Gartner, very agnostic for a certain solution, to Google, where you're very partial to what you are selling. So that was also the place where I really learned about how to work with product managers, how to work with the product team on developing the messaging for what we're selling and
Yeah.
messaging for what we're developing in the future. I think that was a really important switch and transition in my career to go from surveying the market overall to being the voice, the megaphone for a product at a specific company.
And in Salesforce, did you continue to be a similar voice, like, let's scream how great Salesforce is to the world, or what exactly? Because you were there for a while, right? So how
Yep,
about
8 years.
that phase?
Yeah, no, I came into Salesforce as a believer, to be honest. Like I'd seen externally how influential Salesforce was in driving digital transformation at large enterprises. And so I found it so compelling what Salesforce was doing with their platform, with their
Mhm.
CRM, and connecting all of their apps around the customer. So I came in as like the external believer and saying, I believe this is a great product, this is a great platform, a great company. And I had a great role when I joined. I was a customer evangelist. What a fun title that was to have. And I was hired because, Salesforce's model had been to expand through business functions, right? You're a head of sales, you need CRM. Sign up for seats for your sales team. You're head of service, you're going to need Service Cloud. Sign your folks up. You're in IT, you need software that lets you quickly develop apps. Great. Use the Salesforce platform. And so all of a sudden, like a CIO, CEOs were like, wait, we have all this Salesforce at our company and we don't know what it does really, or we're not sure how to get the most value out of it. And so my role was to actually help present to those executive teams and bring the message to them on this is what Salesforce can do to drive transformation at your company, right? It's not just these solutions for your individual teams. When you partner with Salesforce, you're going to change your business. You're going to change the way customers experience your business and build relationships with your business. And so it was really a message not just about Salesforce overall, marketing who the company is, but specifically marketing what could Salesforce do for your company, that is your specific enterprise and the vision for that enterprise and connecting all the data about your customers in that enterprise. So that was a really great role to like bring together the needs of the customer, their desires, their values, their goals, and what Salesforce could offer them. So that was like something, I think that's something you don't get to do as much as a marketer. You're much more the bullhorn, the megaphone. So to have a role where you're really bringing together the customer's voice and Salesforce was very cool. But then, Salesforce grew, it became more well recognized over the next few years. It became a very large company where there was lots of great understanding at our customers what we did. And so I went into industry marketing. In marketing, what can Salesforce do for financial services? What can Salesforce do for healthcare and life sciences? What can Salesforce do for retail and consumer goods? And again, it was all about getting companies that don't know Salesforce really, or don't know everything Salesforce can do in those industries and understand exactly how Salesforce can help them. So that was another opportunity to better hone Salesforce's messaging, positioning for those areas. And then eventually, and my last product area I worked on was in sustainability. And so led the marketing for Salesforce's sustainability solutions and really was part of creating a new market, a new type of product on the market. And that was really exciting. And I got hooked on sustainability and I got hooked on market creation. So that's why where I am today.
And so that's how you got into sustainability. You've been working in that area for how long now?
Since 2021. So 3.5 years, I would say. It feels like longer though. It feels like I was always meant to work in sustainability. And this is the place where I really feel like I found a great home as a marketer in sustainability.
Why does it feel that way?
I think I've always been driven to fight for our environment and for people. And even a letter. I was actually telling my kids the other day, I wrote a letter to President Bush Sr. When I was, I think, in elementary school. And I wrote to him about the ozone. And I was like, I'm really concerned about the ozone and the condition we're going to leave the planet in. As a kid, this is really concerning. We have to do more, as the US government has to do more. And actually, someone in his administration wrote me back a very nice note, what the Bush administration had been doing, and acknowledging the letter. And that kind of introduced me. It's like, wow, this, if you focus on an area that's important to you, you can make a difference and you can be heard. And so I always was focused on. I always felt there was a promise of technology to help make people's lives better. I was always a early enthusiast of Nest. Google actually had just purchased Nest right before I joined. And Nest was all about how can it save you money on your energy bill and be better for the environment. You're using less energy, especially at peak times when they might have to fire up a new power plant to serve energy. And I was like, that's so compelling. The combination of a business benefit backed by software, backed by AI and intelligence that is delivering not just better environmental results, but better bottom line results for the energy companies, better bottom line results for consumers. It's such a win-win. And so I was like, I want to help companies make an impact, not just on growing their business, being able to be a successful business, but being able to business that does good in the world. And I want them to be able to do both at the same time. And so that's, I didn't want to go into sustainability earlier because it was viewed as such a nice to have thing. It's like, oh, sustainability, that's so nice. Here's our person that works in corporate social responsibility. And it was such a disconnected part of the business. But when I saw, Nest was a great example of that business financial success can also go hand in hand with a positive impact on people on the planet.
Yeah.
That was when I knew the time was right to go into the space.
Yeah. No, that's a great point because, obviously I'm all about not only maintaining but improving, right, the environment. And I'm all about, if there are regulations that make sense, from a government standpoint to introduce, I'm all about that, right? I struggle, and especially now as a business owner,
Mhm.
to really come to peace on how much should I be doing and investing when it's really just a choice, And I'm
Mhm.
not saying, that, I mean, from owning a digital marketing agency, there's not much damage you can do there. But point being, it's when you leave it to the choice of companies, when it's legal not to invest in an area, when it's not a regulation, then
Yeah.
it's tough for the business owner, for the stakeholders to say, yeah, no, let's put this amount of money into that. I understand how it becomes more a thing of, well, corporate responsibility and what are people going to say and PR. And that's, but as you mentioned, if there is a financial purpose, right? And if there's that then becomes an absolute no-brainer, right?
Yep.
But I'm curious that you tell us, how exactly do you find those win-win situations? Who do
Mhm.
you have to convince? If you are the one that has to do it, or if there's already if you actually have to find companies that are already seeing it, because a lot of times, there are companies that simply won't convince. Probably, so I don't know. I'd like to hear more a little bit about that, right? How to find those win-win opportunities.
Yeah. And this goes a bit into like persona development in the space too, right? Um, where usually the buyer of software that's focused on sustainability data and insights is someone on the sustainability team. But they also need, they're not the only decision maker. The buying committee is usually someone, in procurement, someone in compliance. It could be someone in operations. And so they have a wider buying committee. They need to convince that this investment in software is needed to do their jobs better and to help grow the business. And actually, one of my customers at Watershed taught me this first value, which was really interesting. And they said, you have to look at what do our customers asking us for? And if we don't invest in sustainability, are we at risk of losing business? Are we at risk of losing deals? Because if you look at the number of companies that have now made commitments to reduce their emissions or improve their environmental impact, it's tens of thousands worldwide. The majority of the Fortune 500 have made those commitments and are very public about those commitments. A majority of those companies now also fall under regulation in Europe, which will require them to publish their transition plans, which is their plan for going to net zero. And so if you look at your customer base and say, well, wait a minute, our customers, that most of their environmental impact, it happens in their supply chain, and I'm in their supply chain. So they're going to start asking me, what are my targets? What's my environmental and social data? What's my plan? Because I'm in their supply chain, I count towards their overall impact. So I say, always follow the customer. First of all, if you see this ask coming from your customers, and maybe as a marketing agency, you might see this ask coming sometime soon. Well, you've got to do something about it, because then you're going to lose business. Or you're going to have some upset customers that you're not cooperating with what they're asking you to do. So that's the
Right.
first and foremost piece.
So very, very compelling messaging. I see the years of experience, in crafting messages for both executive audience and then more focus on the product. But yeah, I absolutely understood it. It was very clear to me how you explained it. So it makes sense. So yeah, tell us a little bit more now about Wordly, and what exactly the platform does. And yeah, let's get into sustainability marketing then.
Yeah. Well, Worldly is a supply chain sustainability data and insights platform. And what that means is it's for companies in the retail and consumer goods space. And for these companies, they have very high environmental and social and labor impacts in their supply chains. Millions of people around the world work in the production of goods. It's staggering, the millions of individuals involved in working at these facilities, transporting goods. And there's a lot of electricity, water usage, chemical usage that happens in the production of goods and clothing. And so if you're a large consumer goods company, a large retailer, you need to know what's happening in your supply chain, because that's the majority of your impact on the planet is what happens at the factories you are paying to produce those goods that you sell. And so what Worldly does is that we work with the factories to get the data on their environmental and social performance. And the factories use our software to be able to share with all of their customers the same data, basically the same questionnaire can be shared to multiple consumer goods and retail companies. And then those consumer goods and retail companies consolidate all the data about their factories and use Worldly to work with those factories on, say, how can we help you with your environmental performance? How can we track your progress towards targets? And so it's really an incredible network that Worldly is built on, because one factory can share with multiple customers, multiple consumer goods companies and retailers can receive data from their hundreds, sometimes thousands of factories around the world. And that's really powerful. That also hasn't been replicated yet in any other industry. So that's why I joined, because it's so exciting to see this data being exchanged between suppliers and their customers. That is not happening in a lot of the supply chain in the world. And so I'm really bullish about how Worldly can help make this network even stronger, bring more data insights to its current customers, and bring this model to other customers who have large, complex supply chains and want to improve their environmental and social impacts there too.
Interesting. So you basically, right, you have to have a database of factories and the emissions. And obviously at the beginning, and I was thinking a lot about a sister project that we have. We've always been involved in the sports world. And not too long ago, we started, I guess now it's been 5 years, but we essentially gathered data from baseball kids, baseball prospects in Latin America, in particular in Venezuela and Dominican Republic. And then, we sell that data to teams in Major League Baseball, right? So at the beginning, the players were like, no, and then if I'm not pitching too fast, I don't want them to see my data. But so at the beginning, it's an exercise of, we have to convince the kids that transparency and data trust is their friend, and they have to acknowledge that they have to be open. They have to see being measured as an advantage, because in this world, either we're going to measure them and the MLB trusts us, or MLB is not going to hire them, for that matter. So if companies are using Worldly to measure impact and make decisions based on that, then factories better be, on your database and looking at the numbers or start improving the numbers. So is that a fair analogy? Is that kind of like what it is to be that in, or I guess, another way to ask is, factors at the beginning, they were they ever hesitant to be measured?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what the business case around sustainability, that for these factories, their customers want this data. That's what it comes down to. Their customers want this data. Now, what Worldly does that's a bit unique is that it lets the factories control their data. So it's not a marketplace where their data is for sale for anyone. The factories choose who they share the data with. So that part of control and trust is very important. And it also is about, measurement is something many sustainability leaders have been chasing for a decade, but we're at the point where many commitments to sustainability improvements are set for 2030. That's only 5 years away. And so it's time to start taking that measurement and putting it into action. So what's really promising, now that the measurement is there through Worldly already, is how do you then facilitate the collaboration between a customer and the factory? Because it's not about, oh, factory, I don't like the data, you didn't perform as well as I wanted. we're going to stop doing business. That's not always the right approach. It's more, how can we work together to find the best way for this factory to produce the best product with the best quality at the best price with the best possible environmental impact? And so that's where you really see customers and their suppliers starting to work together, and they need to use Worldly's platform to kind of track the data that's happening and track progress towards targets, and also figure out the best path forward for working with each supplier at scale. Again, like I said, many of our customers have hundreds of suppliers. So this has to be done. This is much better done on a platform rather than through, spreadsheets or one-off initiatives. So I think that's what's really exciting, is that we've gone from having the data, having the measurement in place, to then the next step is factories use our software to take action, and our consumer goods and retail customers use Worldly to take action.
Any, let's say, success story that you can share, even saying the brand name or saying the category of how and the plan that you came about?
Yeah, I can share some without like sharing a specific name. And a lot of it's around, I'd say there's a big initiative right now around coal phase out for factories, and that can they stop using power that is coal driven, right? And so what we saw in with a customer is that they specifically wanted to get data from factories that had an opportunity to use renewable energy in their region, but had not yet invested in it. And so they agreed, or they came to they were tracking the data coming in through Worldly from those factories and said, you know what, we've done an analysis, and we think that if you transition over to renewables, then you'll be able to reduce your emissions. And we've also factored in the price, right? What you're paying for the coal generated power. This is the impact on the price. And so as your customer, like, we are willing to negotiate on the price of the things you're selling us if you move away from coal. But if we're going to do that, we need to track that you are indeed changing over to that renewable power source. So on Worldly, you're able on the platform to track kind of monthly utility data. And so they are now using Worldly to track that group of facilities, their monthly utilities, to ensure they are following the coal phase out program. And then, that also means that they can put a premium on the products they are selling because they are made with better environmental impact. And that makes the customers happy, because the customer's like, now I'm also able to meet the targets I've set, that I'm sharing with my investors, the targets I'm sharing with regulators. It's really important that I get to that, and I need that facility to share that data with me monthly in order to get there. So that's an example of how a customer would be using Worldly.
No, it's a great example. Thanks for sharing that. And then from now that we understand the business, the industry, what Worldly is doing and where it's going, what is tell us a little bit about the marketing challenges that you guys have faced?
I mean, many of the companies in sustainability software solutions are facing a category creation challenge. It is a wild market out there. And we talked very at the beginning of this podcast about quadrants, right? And waves. And those are really done by category, right? It's like best CRM, best marketing automation, best ABM platform. And it really doesn't exist right now for sustainability, what those categories are. And it's actually incredibly difficult on the analyst relations side, because each analyst firm does the categories differently. So sometimes you might qualify for a quadrant over here and you don't qualify for a quadrant over there, because they're grouping different sets of functionality together. And so that's really hard. I feel of empathy for our customers, the buyers, because they're also like, wait, I have this problem, but what type of software actually solves that? You can't just say, oh, I guess it's time for a CRM system. You have to say, okay, I'm being contacted by 30 different companies. They're all selling something slightly different. So as a marketer, you have to be really crisp on your messaging and how you connect with your customers, because you're educating them about how to buy. You're educating them about what you offer. And in this market, there's a lot of messaging out there that makes it not clear what you and your competitors may bring to the table. So I think category creation is a big challenge, bringing clarity to our buyers, helping them get the best solution they need. And they really can't always compare. I say you can't compare apples to apples a lot of the time, because what one provider is going to offer you is just fundamentally different from what you're going to get. And their budgets are super constrained. So you can't say, well, how about you just buy all three solutions? They'll address each piece of your needs over here. They're looking for one platform. So I think that's a big challenge we have, is that matching the solutions available to what the buyers want in a very noisy, new type of market.
And how have not, because I'm sure you realized that challenge a while ago. How did you guys adapt to that reality, and what did you do to make the most out of it? And Jen was saying before we started recording that something that I hadn't thought about it with those words, which is the importance of going from being a nice to have to a must have, right? Which I think is basically what I was trying to ask you. So
Yeah.
how are you tackling that mission?
Yeah. I mean, sustainability, like I said, such a nice to have in so many ways. And the time has come for it to be the must have. And I think, again, why for the must have, you have to get to the fundamental problem the business is facing. And the fundamental problem is often we've committed to reducing emissions, reducing water, reducing waste, and yet no proof to back that up in the supply chain. So some of this greenwashing accusations that have come out have actually really helped push companies toward needing the software, to say you need the data and you need the evidence documented to show what you're doing and be able to back up your claims.
Yeah.
That's such a big case. So reputation is at stake. And then I think the next differentiator is, it's great to have the data, but you need to take the action now, because this is where targets are coming due in 2030. Everyone's asking, what's your progress? How are you going to get to having these targets met? And so the companies that you really have to create the market by showing, what have we done? I think that example on coal phase out is very concrete, to say, like, this is a concrete thing we've been able to do with our customers. And we need to have more of those stories that go beyond just, oh yeah, we got them the data. Great. Now they have data that backs up what they did. Now we need to say, now they actually took an action and made progress and made improvements using our platform. And that's what people are hungry for. So I think the companies that do that will help create the market, and you go after use cases to say, every product I launch now, I'm like, what's the use case? Give me 3 top use cases, because people need to see how real it is and how they can use it to shine in their own jobs.
So from what I'm hearing, it has been mostly a messaging adjustment to hone in on the fact that, hey, watch out, like being crisp and perhaps a little more aggressive on the fact that, it's not an option. They need it, right? Otherwise, around the don't don't be an empty promise company, back. And you've seen the difference in in engagement, or in replies, or in the sense of urgency that you create in the decision makers?
Yeah. And risk is a big one that also brings more stakeholders to the table. I think we've heard in the news, supply chain disruptions are happening more and more often due to natural disasters. There's also a lot of supply chain risk in, working with factories that may be, not able to reduce water usage, not able to respond to environmental regulation. And so you need to know the risk in your supply chain, because it could disrupt your business eventually. So that's another emerging trend, I would say, recently, is that sustainability isn't a nice to have thing. It's actually risk management. As we do face more global regulation, as we face more natural disasters, as we face more human rights advocacy as well, I would say, around the world. That's probably one of the biggest areas. Actually, I see the risk becoming a bigger factor to say, is there a risk when I do business with a factory that there aren't proper human rights practices being followed? So that's another area where we see the business case becoming much clearer for sustainability in the risk management side for supply chains.
And from those learnings in the messaging, I think that's challenging to do, especially in B2B, in direct to consumer, where you have your product being consumed by thousands, millions of people, and you can even do a survey. You can pay $1,000 on SurveyMonkey or send out a team or whatever, right? In B2B, it's much tougher, right? And especially a lot of times those people are in the marketing department or product marketing, and there's simply not so much data, right? You probably talk to a sales team a little bit, you see the website and kind of have your own theories about it. But like in your case, like first of all, where did you come up with the insights that, hey, we need to hone in on this message to create a sense of urgency? And second, like, how did you confirm that this new messaging was working better, right? Or in other words, any advice on how to gain customer insights and test theories, for folks at B2B marketing?
Yeah. It is tough, right? I think we've all benefited a lot from now, call recording software. We were just talking about this before the podcast too. All the many different apps that are available to record calls. So as a product marketer, wow, I can listen to 20 sales calls without now having to invite myself along. So that is hugely helpful. I think also you keep your the sustainability community is actually very close knit. I'd say a lot of folks who work as sustainability professionals know each other or connect to each other in some way. And so, what I've found very valuable is find your, I see viewed as like a hub and spoke, find your hubs, the people who talk to all the other people in sustainability. Find the people who are having 100 conversations with sustainability professionals and get their take. You're like, you're the hub, you're the person representing the sustainability community in a lot of ways. Hear what they're saying, test your messaging on them. Because
the Gardener of sustainability.
Yeah, the Gardener of sustainability, exactly. And so find those people. I've been fortunate, working at Salesforce. Salesforce is an amazing sustainability team. So that was a great way to connect with the rest of the sustainability community. So that was a really influential one. And then I think we also need to be really conscious about what are the other people in the business saying. So that's my always question. I'm like, when you talk to the sustainability professional, I'm like, what does your compliance team say? What is your procurement person saying? Can I talk to them? Because their voice is really important and they're really new to sustainability. So I need to really understand that buyer as well, because they have other goals and other targets. They have bottom lines to hit. And so if I'm not also addressing their needs, we're not going to close the deal. So I think that's another big one, is to think holistically about the person, again, like I said, the champions, stakeholders, and get insights from them as well, because they're going to matter a lot. And when I worked at a big company, I could go pay a research firm and do a survey and get insights back. And now that I work at a smaller company, it's really just being scrappy about surveys. I love LinkedIn, actually following influential folks on LinkedIn for what they think. And, just setting up those one-to-one conversations when possible.
Yeah, no, and that's what you mentioned about the recordings, that's, you can not only record and listen, you can now put the transcripts, just have an AI, analyze all of them and just ask ChatGPT, hey, out of these 120 calls, what was the main, reason of why they didn't end up buying? Boom, here you have it.
And a fun other thought on that, and this, I actually used, there's a lot of use cases out there for ChatGPT and other LLMs. I like to use it to see how is my messaging being perceived in the market, because it's, that is learning from you, from all the content Worldly puts out. Then ChatGPT is learning about Worldly, right? And so other people are actually doing their software research using ChatGPT or other similar platforms. So I find that, like, test what those platforms take away from your marketing, and you have a very interesting insight, and test case for what you're putting out there, and whether what you're putting on your website and putting your content is actually making it through to these machines, that people are now going to use.
No, that's a great advice. something that I've been talking with my team and also with a few clients a lot lately, because as you mentioned, well, we handle paid search and also SEO for our clients, and there's certainly a risk of other media and especially AI cannibalizing, essentially Google search results, both organic and paid, right? For example, ChatGPT was one. The thing is, ChatGPT used to be kind of bad at research questions, but it has gotten a lot better. And there's one that I use a lot. I actually put a post recommending on LinkedIn a couple of days ago, Perplexity,
Yep.
which is much better at finding the right sources and the most relevant and current, and also giving you visibility on where they're finding those things. So I can definitely see how asking those AI agents, what they think about your company or what people are saying, is like instant customer feedback,
Yeah.
and just for $20 a month, you can definitely a good use of or one example of being scrappy when you're not on Salesforce or Google type of R&D budgets.
And I use Perplexity, Claude, ChatGPT. Usually it's great to use all three just to see what they all bring back to you,
Yeah.
to test on sustainability issues. And like what is the sentiment about, ESG and ESG backlash right now? How are people talking about CSRD? So I actually use them to kind of gather different sentiment or discussion topics that are bubbling up and see what they bring back, because I do find that to be very insightful as well.
Since we're discussing AI, any other, I don't know, cool tools that you use that you recommend, or a general use case of AI?
Yeah, I'm a believer that the best AI will just get embedded in everything you do. I think like AI for AI's sake is something that you'll see with more sophisticated users. But for us that aren't thinking about how to use like, AI to code, I'm more of like if it's available in the things I already use, like turn on that feature. Like with Slack, turn on the feature that summarizes your messages. Zoom, turn on the AI note taker and see what it summarizes. So that's a huge piece. And then there are a lot of great content generation platforms. I wouldn't endorse a particular one. I think they all have different strengths. But I would say like, there's the most basics from proofreading or helping your copy really shine to creating original content. I'm still looking, if anyone has a great startup out there, you can pitch me on AI for amazing demo videos. Because as a product marketer, that is one of those really valuable assets that actually still, I've tried a couple different options, but nothing meets, has yet to beat the professional video producer. But I hope that's coming soon. So I think AI for video assets would be incredibly awesome. I've seen it done well for like basic types of videos, but not for the more B2B SaaS style demo where you're doing things that are more nuanced.
Especially when you are a B2B of a certain size, that if you are a 4 people company, maybe, you can get away with this kind of rookie AI videos. But I think, at a point, for example, where World is, or even like, I am, again, I see, I'm not happy. Like, I wouldn't be proud of putting a video of that representing, let's say, my agency just yet, but, definitely let me know if you find one that you like.
Absolutely.
Cool, Jen. Well, and I hate to end before, without asking if there's anything you'd like to share that I didn't get to ask or we didn't get to cover that you think would benefit the listeners.
Yeah.
Actually, I have one question before that one. I just remembered. For messaging, right? Any either mentor, book, or resource that you recommend? And I ask because I think messaging is surprisingly underrated today, right? Especially like we are a demand generation agency, so we're always focusing on the analytics and A/B testing. But a lot of times, if you don't have the right messaging, you won't get a good ROI, right? If your product is not good, or if people are not perceiving your product as valuable, there's nothing you can do. It's not the tactic, it's not the platform, it's not the keyword, it's not, the time of the year. No, it's simply people are not liking the product, not seeing the value, right? So I think it's very underrated, and I'm curious to see if you have any recommendation on how to and how marketers can improve their messaging skills, because that's something that every marketer should be at least fairly competent at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would highly recommend signing up for That's Punchy, the newsletter by Emma Stratton. I don't know if you've heard about her before,
I
but
haven't.
fantastic resource, very inspirational. She gives great real examples of messaging work she's done with other companies, and it's always very inspiring. So big fan of That's Punchy. The other, and I bring back to lessons from different companies. A lot of what I learned at Salesforce was consistency matters. People often like to mix up messaging to keep it interesting, or they think it's getting stale. No, messaging consistency is very powerful, especially in a bigger company. You want people to see the same words, the same message across your website, across your decks, hearing the salespeople say the same thing. It's very, very powerful. And if you're branding yourself as an AI company, you want to make sure you're talking about AI in the same way across your company. So I learned a lot about the power of consistency, and fun at Salesforce too. I think that was one great part about Salesforce. The messaging there is fun. So bring that energy, not just dryness. We can get in B2B SaaS territory
I hate
sometimes.
it. Yeah, I completely. That's the only thing. I like B2B, honestly, more than D2C, but I hate the actually, and I have my own prompt for ChatGPT of forbidden words like unleash and whatever. I hate those how that copywriting sounds. So I'm a lot of fun as well.
Unleash. We haven't used that one in a while. That's a good one. And then when I went to Watershed, after Salesforce, that's where I learned how to make messaging, I would say, devastatingly simple, right? Your audience, I mean, I've done studies on like how people interact with a UX and your UI. They do not read much. They really don't. The number of words matter. And that's why I love That's Punchy, because it's really all also about the power of being concise. And so really learned from the team at Watershed the power of being concise and short, while still even being able to bring in that element of fun, being able to be consistent. So that brevity is really powerful. Few words is more powerful than a lot of words. And so that's something I've been really trying to bring into practice with Worldly. And when I say, Worldly is a supply chain sustainability data platform, that still breaks my heart a little bit because it's a little long. So I'm still working on making that shorter. And
I worked on the intro, on your intro before the podcast, and it was tough, right? So I was like, I'm just gonna let her introduce the company. I'm sure she'll do a better job, but at least it's comforting to hear that it's also challenging for you too.
Oh yeah.
All right, Jen. Any other thing? Now back to my second to last. Anything that we missed that you want to share?
I mean, one thing we didn't talk about is really the use of data to drive marketing. And there's I feel like marketers, we're in the age of richness of data. It's like every product you use is just going to give you so many insights. And that's where I'm probably most excited about as a marketer, is around the promise of AI. Because I can't tell you the number of times I've downloaded HubSpot reports or email reports or customer reports and been like, how do I analyze this and cut this data? And, one of my teammates the other day was like, oh yeah, I fed all that data into Perplexity and asked it some questions. I was like, oh, wow. The customer insights we could get now are like boundless. So I'm feeling really great and excited about the opportunities we have to just ask questions of our own data and customers, and unlock that, because we just are awash in so much data now as marketers.
I agree. We don't want more data. We don't need more data. We just need better interpretation. That's all.
Yep.
All right, Jen. Well, thanks a lot. It was great to have you. So I appreciate you being on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to talk with you today.
Thanks for listening to the Tailwind Marketing Podcast. If you enjoyed it, remember to subscribe for future episodes. Until next time.